Hey everyone, welcome back to Italian Cinema Night here on the Bad Movie Night channel. And we're back with another Sergio Martino film.
That's correct, AJ. We are back for The Strange Vice of Mrs. Wardh.
That silent H.
Silent H on the end. Not the only Sergio Martino movie with a vice either. We've already covered another one of his.
It's funny, there's like some spaces in this, but we'll get to it.
Yeah, there's in the letter they mentioned that.
Yeah.
We'll get to it. Yeah.
So yeah, this is The Strange Vice of Mrs. Wardh from 1971 by Sergio Martino.
His perversion knows no limit until... What strange vice pushed this man to beautiful women and their throats? Slowly, silently, almost as if he were not there, and yet...
And yeah, this is the first film in the genre that he had done. We watched the Scorpion's Tail, which came out the year after this, and that was more coming off the success of this film.
Yeah, his previous feature was like a Western, I think, right?
Yeah, he had done Westerns and stuff.
Strange Vice of Mrs. Wardh. I guess we can go into the plot.
Yeah.
About a young woman who is married to a diplomat. Mrs. Wardh is her name, who has what appears to be some sort of stalker, and she believes it's one of her past lovers. But she also has many lovers in this movie, so it's hard to tell. And meanwhile, there is a masked killer with a razor murdering indiscriminately. Seems to be stalking her, but also murdering other people. And there's also a vice. She has a vice.
Yes.
And that is that she's into very kinky sex that involves kind of like blood and just kind of being like...
She's into blood play.
Blood play, but she also is very submissive and likes being beaten and stuff. So there is a very erotic angle to this movie.
Yes, very much so.
So what'd you think?
I thought it was pretty interesting. Considering this is like his first movie in the genre, it did have some like echoes a little bit of like Dario Argento's Birth of Crystal Plumage, and I think he was inspired by that because this came out right after that. It definitely has some like issues with writing and elements and whatnot. Like I could totally see this being remade today with like a newer, fresh perspective on the audience, because it did have some great scenes in it.
It has some really great scenes, some really high highs. The problems, well, we can get into some of the problems, but I really enjoyed this movie for the most part. What I liked about it that you don't get a lot in a lot of giallos is it really kind of focused on the one character for most of the movie. And so you got to know her a bit more, and it made the story much more interesting, I thought, where the red herrings that they would throw in were actually like relevant and like grounded in a way where I was like brought into the mystery and not just confused with a convoluted mess, if that makes sense.
There is an early scene where she's invited to her friend Carol's party, and most of those characters that are at that party end up being murder victims, which I thought was kind of cool because it plays into like, oh, you kind of recognize this person. It's somehow related to the circle, right?
Yes. And the ending was surprising. And then
the second ending was even more surprising.
Well, so I really liked, and we'll spoil it eventually here, but I really liked the first ending where a character was wrapped up and then it reveals actually what's going on. And I wish it would have ended there. It would have been this weird dark note, but I was like, wow, that is shocking.
Yeah.
But then the fact that the movie goes on for 5 more minutes and it becomes beyond shocking into ridiculous and kind of stupid was like, but it was still fun, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like, let's talk through it. So like, what I consider the first ending was when you find out that the guy slashing and killing people is just a random guy unrelated to our main character's story.
Yes, okay.
Right, I felt like that was kind of an ending. When you see that, and you realize this is just by happenstance and unrelated to our main character's story. It's just happening coincidentally. And then it cuts to her on the boat with what's the guy's name?
George
Hilton's character. Yeah, George.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was going to be the end. Like playing the music, and then it kind of leads into this like third and final act, which I wasn't really expecting, which was kind of interesting. What did you think with all that?
So when that happened and they revealed who the killer is, I knew it wasn't going to be the end, because every one of these giallos has some sort of crazy, more elaborate twist.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if it was that guy, I was waiting for the elaborate way in which it's all connected. And then it never reveals that guy. And then when you get to later where Mrs. Wardh is killed, our main character, and then the reveal happens where it's actually her husband and her lover have been like planning and scheming this whole thing so that they each benefit from her death and the friend's death and everything. Was evil. Really cool. Yeah. And I was like, if this movie goes out on this, I'll be shocked, because it's so shocking.
So dark.
It's like it's so dark, and I would have been I was like, I was happy with that ending, but then it goes on past that where actually she's not dead and she's walking down the street and they're swerving and then their car wrecks and blows up.
But it was such a cool scene regardless. It made no sense.
Yes. And that's the problem with a lot of giallos. Yeah. It's like, okay, I don't care what just happened because it was cool.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Like when they're driving down the road and they see her, and like there was no reasoning for it. Like what were they doing? They weren't trying to like get them on tape or anything. Like why would the police even put her in that situation? It made no sense.
That's the contrived nature of a lot of these movies, where it's like, well, we want the killers to think they're seeing her because they're haunted by what they did. But in reality, like that makes sense if it was just a vision. But it's not. She's literally walking down the street for no reason beyond they want to make it painted like the killers are seeing this thing.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work in reality then. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. I still thought this was a really fun movie, and also like we also have to place this. This is like one of the first and early films of this genre that did. You know, I was reading a bit more about this guy and him making this movie, and like one of the things he talked about is like this genre wasn't taken seriously. Like it was kind of like fluff, and he wanted to bring like a more serious element to it. And one of the reasons why they film all over all these different cities and stuff was to give it more international appeal outside of Italy. And I also found out, which I thought was really interesting, is the erotic elements. Like there's always so much nudity in these movies, and specifically his. Yeah. Those are done on purpose because they wanted an R rating, because an R rating brought more people to the theater. And they also overshot those scenes on purpose, knowing they'd be censored for TV and censored. So we get these movies, which I think is really interesting. We see these full movies fully uncut and unedited, but he didn't really shoot them, these erotic scenes, thinking that's what the final version was going to be, even though they put all that stuff back in. Like they edited down those erotic scenes heavily. And that's why he overshot him on purpose, knowing they would try to do that to him, which I thought was really interesting. Apparently it's like this Italian trick at that time, was you overshoot these erotic scenes on purpose, knowing to be edited.
So we're seeing the versions that are unedited, though?
Yeah, and that's why they go on for so long. They're so fluffed, and it's like they're not like that.
They're exploitative.
Yeah.
In the first half of this movie, it's almost every scene ends with a woman getting naked. And not even story important. There's scenes where half the women are just in the shower or getting out of the shower when we're introduced to them.
Well, it's also in Italy too.
It's Italy, so it's a little bit more free.
Yeah.
But then, which I get that with a lot of the women in beds are always naked.
Yeah.
Which is like, maybe that's just a cultural thing, but whatever. But then there's like, you get this party scene where these two women just start fighting and ripping their clothes off, and it's like, okay, this is like it doesn't serve anything. Have you ever been to a party
where someone's ripped someone else's clothes off and they just
I want to be, but I'm like.
Yeah, that's completely ridiculous, and like.
So, I mean, it's a misogynistic movie for sure. A lot of these are. Mrs. Wardh is not. See, I mean, by the end, she is some sort of femme fatale type thing, even though she's not really actually. She could have been, but she's still just a tool used by other people.
And then
to
she
like
ends up in the doctor's hands at the end. I'm like,
because it's kind of patronizing. But what I thought could have been like when I was watching this movie, I was getting like Fatal Attraction, but not the same. Meaning, like in Fatal Attraction, she is a femme fatale, and she owns every man in the movie with her charisma and her sex appeal, where she has control of all the situations. She has the power.
Yeah.
But in this movie, she has all these men, and I was kind of waiting for like the actual femme fatale thing to come through, because it seemed like she might have been manipulating all these men. But in reality, no, she's just like this plaything for all these guys, and she just does whatever.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was a little disappointing anyways.
I completely get that.
I was waiting for that to be the twist. But
yeah, and that would have been a great way to do it too, like, you know.
Although, what is cool about this movie is the surreal elements they throw in with these dream sequences.
Yes.
Where she flashes back to like sequences with these men.
Yes. I thought that was really cool. Like the early scene where she's in the car crying and it's raining, and then she runs out of the car. Man, that was like, that was also like those surreal scenes that they play out. That's like past memories. He had said that they had cut those from the original theatrical release because audiences couldn't follow them, which I thought was really interesting. Like Italian audiences weren't used to following these like surreal kind of
like out of sequence type things.
Like for edit, like it was foreign to them, which I thought was really interesting.
I mean, it is jarring, but on purpose. It feels like it's purposeful. And that scene was kind of like really grim, and then like also intense, because it was like he was beating her. Yeah. And like they were on the ground and it's raining and she's like into it then. Yeah.
She's
and it was like okay, this
is.
And it was like this is some dark, uncomfortable stuff. Yeah. And that is one of the main driving forces in the movie, is that she has this affinity for blood, where she is turned on by it, but also like extremely scared of it.
Yeah. She's turned on by like this guy's sexual nature, but she's scared of him as a person. That's the
yes. And she can't quite break away from him, and he's always like stalking her and stuff. Yeah. So it's like a lot of this movie feels like this like psychological descent where she starts losing grip. Yes. And she's seeing things that aren't actually there, and there's people stalking her or might not be, and she's getting these flowers, and that's the stuff, like that storyline was very engrossing for me.
Yeah. Me too, because it also just opens up to all these possibilities of like what could be going on, you know. Yeah. It was an interesting movie. What did you think of like the way it was shot and like?
So when it started, I thought it felt really cheap, and like not as slick as a lot of the Giallos we watched. I think it does get there, but the opening was like, felt like hastily edited. Yeah. We're in the cab, there's a kill, we're at the airport, all of a sudden we're not. She's back in a car.
Yeah,
like it just was like
low budgety kind of.
Yes. But then there's sequences later on where they're at like this big garden like place that was really pretty cool and a great setting. You get to like Spain, and it feels like higher production values and stuff. So I'm not quite sure. It was all over the place for me. There was there was definitely highs to this movie that I thought were really good, but then I don't know.
Yeah, that's.
What'd you think?
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way. It felt kind of like B movie-esque at the beginning. Yeah. But then it kind of opened up to like larger worlds and larger environments. That's also why I felt like the movie was going to end at that one point where they're on the boat, because they're playing this music, and I'm like, oh, this is a weird way to end it. And then you go into and you're continuing the story into Spain and into those elements, and it's interesting. It doesn't perfectly like click in a lot of ways, but I think this is also like a lead into trying to do like what they were saying is doing more international stuff, which you get later with his other films. You get bigger elements and locations, you know, makes it feel more grand kind of.
What'd you think of the kill sequences?
I thought they were okay. I thought they weren't
Yeah.
like over the top, but I think also they were kind of probably more shocking than a lot of stuff done prior. Like I know he said he was very he thought like the way Argento made more shocking content with like the Bird of the Crystal Plumage. He thought that was really effective, so he was trying to do a little bit of that into his work as well and give it kind of like some more realism. But it's still like, I don't know, I didn't think it was like over the top, and I didn't think it was like timid either, you know?
No, it wasn't. There was no like. Argento then devolves into like very memorable kill sequences.
Yeah.
The Bird with the Crystal Plumage isn't really that, though, I don't think. And
No.
neither is this. This was like the kill sequences are there and they serve a purpose, and some of them are like intense in the way they're shot, but they're not memorable in any way.
No.
There's no opera where the lady looks at the door and like
you're not coming to this movie to see those scenes.
No. No. But you do have, it is still the typical Giallo flair with the gloves and the POV with the knife, and so I love just seeing that.
Which is always great. I was just gonna say, like, elaborate, like, there were some really beautiful shots too, like even some of the nude shots. Remember that shot where they're like above the couch shooting down on them?
Yeah.
And it's just like it was perfectly framed and like really beautifully done. Like there was some great like cinematography moments put in.
I like that scene where the woman is walking in the park down the trail and it switches to her POV for a moment. And it started to feel like, I've seen so many movies that take place in like a forest and stuff, but for whatever reason, like it was like really dark but still daytime, and I've experienced that walking in the trails and stuff myself, where it starts to get a little creepy.
And,
and I thought they captured that feeling really well. And I like the one sequence where Mrs. Wardh dies. I thought that was particularly intense, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on there until it's all some like. But there's a cool little thing he does where he grabs an ice cube, and you're like, what is he doing?
Yeah, I thought that was like some James Bond shit. It's like, what is he
but
doing?
it was pretty clever how he put it so that the door would fall, and it looked like she locked herself in to commit suicide.
Yeah,
and I was like, that's pretty smart. And they like make you sit there and watch him do the whole thing and watch it work out. So I thought that was kind of cool.
That was cool.
What'd you think of the music in this movie?
I really like the music.
Yeah.
He was doing this really cool stuff, and I'm always just like a favorite of this, where you use a lot of vocals and voices, and you get like this like emotional like humming, like those. I love what that was happening in the music. I thought it was really cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it felt like atmospheric.
Ominous and yes, 100%. This main actress, I don't remember her name. She's a very obviously pretty woman, but
Fenech?
She has like these eyes, and they keep like focusing on her face, and it's always like a great like, I don't know, they just keep doing that visual in the movie where like the lights go out, but for whatever reason there's still light on her face, and they pull in, and it's like and her eyes like search the scene. She just has a good look, and I liked her character. I thought her acting was pretty good. I mean,
he uses her in a lot of his movies, probably because of that, like her look, and she just like seems to fit in these kind of mystery roles well.
And I like the three main men because they were different in their own ways. Like, you don't usually get a lot of character development in these kind of movies.
Yeah.
And they didn't really either, but they still had their they were individual characters. They weren't just pretty men.
And they weren't all
pretty
the same.
men.
They were very different.
They were very different, and the one guy was into like the BDSM. The other guy was like thrilling her in different ways, and then you had like the more homely husband type guy.
And they did that really well. I thought the guy they casted, what's his name, Ivan Rasimov, like he was creepy, and he looked creepy.
Yeah, he looked intimidating. Yeah,
but man, he has that look of like, this guy's like sinister.
I'm pretty sure he's in All the Colors of the Dark.
Oh,
maybe I'm wrong, or maybe George Hilton is.
Yeah, I know George Hilton's in a lot of his movies. Like apparently George Hilton like married his cousin, Sergio Martino's cousin or something. So he's like family to like the director. Yeah, so that's why he's in a lot of stuff.
So Ivan, what's this guy's name? Ivan Rasimov is also in The Strange Color, or All the Colors of the Dark as
I'm
well,
really
which is
excited to
the
watch
next
that one.
Sergio Martino movie. I think that came out in '72. So that one sounds awesome.
I know. I'm hoping it's as good as we think it's going to be.
Because what a lot of the recent Giallos we've been watching have been this kind of thing, where
Yeah.
it's like the last one we talked about was like high society, although that one had more of a supernatural bent that it kind of went for, but it was like high society, rich people, lovers quarreling, and then somehow there's some sort of money involved.
Yeah.
And when you boil it down, that's what this movie is as well, just told in a different way. But I mean, it's all about the execution, and this was good. I liked it.
It was good.
Yeah. Sergio Martino does it again, man.
Yeah, I recommend it. I mean, I'm becoming a fan.
Yeah, he's still alive. I don't think he's making movies anymore, but I mean, he's made so many movies. I wonder where his Giallo run ends, though. Does it end in the 70s?
Yeah, it ends. He actually goes into like another form of like Italian cinema, of like the mystery that comes after Giallos. Yeah. And he makes one final one after Torso, so we should watch that. I forget what it's called, but
The Suspicious Death of a Minor?
Yeah, that's it.
It says action crime horror. That's interesting. Yeah.
And that's supposed to be like the next tier of like moving out of the Giallo into the next thing. So I'm curious to see what that's like.
Yeah. I'm excited for it. What are we watching next time, though?
We're gonna watch The Night Evelyn Came Out of the Grave, which looks amazing.
That trailer was great. Yes,
it looks awesome. I think it's gonna be gothic-y, horror-y, and like kind of erotic too.
Okay. The only last thing I'll say about this movie is our copy was dubbed. I don't know if there is an original version or if this is the original version. I know it was an Italian-French or something kind of collaboration.
Like an Italian version.
Okay.
You know what's interesting too? I was reading Torso's in English. And
straight English, or is it like dubbed?
No,
really?
It's straight English because they shot it at like international universities. So they got away with using English as like the main language for the movie, which I thought was pretty cool.
Wow.
It's like the way they moved around it to make it more international.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely heard of Torso many times.
Yeah.
I wonder if it feels more mainstream. We'll find out.
We'll find out. I know it's probably gonna be more slashery, horror-y, which would be interesting.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, that is the thing. I mean, if you're watching Giallos, you probably like this kind of stuff. But this is. I thought the pacing was good, but it is a slower. There's horror elements, but it is a slower kind of movie like that.
Like on
but they keep it interesting because there is a lot of sex and a lot of stuff like that as well. So the story, I thought the plot was thick. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's some cool, fun kills. There's a lot of nudity and sex and stuff. It's visually a good time.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Check it out.
Yeah, check it out. I don't think it's on Amazon.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you might have to track this one down, but
I might have to track it.
We had a DVD of it, but all right, cool. That's
guys.
it. That's gonna do it for the strange vice of Mrs. Wardh. AJ, we will explore your strange vice next time.
Look out! It's a new
on
show.
Italian Cinema Night. Thank you guys. Goodbye.